facing the largest migration disaster in history, with some 70 million refugees worldwide. For the last 80 years, the United States has taken in refugees, not just due to a legal obligation, but a moral one. Since President Trump took office, there's been a near shutdown of the asylum process, prompting one asylum officer and union shop steward to write a Washington Post opinion column titled, "The U.S. hired me to protect refugees. Now it tells me to abandon them." Joining us now is the author Jason Marks, an asylum training officer and union shop steward. Jason, thanks so much for your time.
Glad to be here, Lindsay. Thank you for having me today.
So you wrote in the Washington Post that America has abandoned its promise to protect the most vulnerable. How so?
So basically, refugee protection is as American as apple pie. It's been etched into the fabric of our identity since before our founding. The Pilgrims, as most people know, were fleeing religious persecution, found a safe haven in the United States. And really, since the end of World War II, we have spearheaded the global effort to resettle refugees. And since 1980, in particular, when the Refugee Act was passed, we codified the legal framework for protecting people on account of who they are and where they were born. And since that time, five American presidencies have, under five American presidents, we've admitted more refugees than the rest of the world combined. So we have international and U.S. legal obligations to protect the world's most vulnerable folks, refugees, and we also have a moral responsibility. As I said earlier, it's etched into the fabric of our identity going back to before our founding. The rest of the world looks to us to provide refugee protection, and we have abandoned that role since beginning in 2017.
And since January 2017, as you are stating here, I mean, the Trump administration has clamped down significantly on the immigration process, starting initially with the travel ban from mainly Muslim countries and putting in place what is called extreme vetting. Describe what that means in terms of refugees and others seeking asylum.
Yeah, so the first thing the travel ban did, it was implemented within a few days of the administration taking office. And immediately the Refugee Assistance Program was grounded. My colleagues and I were literally grounded from going on overseas trips to interview and vet refugees around the world. It implemented a bar of folks coming from 7 different predominantly Muslim majority countries. And it essentially grounded the overseas program. And then to follow up with that, it started the process of implementing extreme vetting measures that have allowed for these cases of folks coming from certain countries to remain on hold seemingly indefinitely. Added layers and layers of review that held up people in the process that otherwise would have been admitted and resettled. And we're still seeing to this day thousands of people in that quote-unquote refugee pipeline that are still held up, that have been interviewed and vetted years and years ago prior to the ban being implemented. And then as we move forward into 2018 and then 2019, we then saw the administration take it a step further and start to implement a series of policies at the border that have made it now nearly impossible for people to seek protection, asylum protection in the United States.
Would you say that those who are seeking that protection, it's basically equal opportunity across the board, or have people from Black and brown communities been impacted at a larger rate?
I would say that they impact people across the board, but just in effect, they impact people of color from around the world. Just because of the folks that we're seeing come to the United States in more recent times, predominantly from Central America and the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, have had a massive refugee crisis as those folks are fleeing the MS-13 and 18th Street gangs, which have just unleashed terror upon those communities. The only option many of those folks see is to flee to the United States to seek refuge. And then, and around the world, particularly the Syrian war unleashed, as you referred to, the largest mass migration crisis really in the history of the world. The Syrian war really was the cause of that. And most of those folks obviously are coming from Syria and are Muslim and from the Arab world. So the effect of these policies impact folks of color more so, but really they would impact anybody now trying to come to the United States.
And of course, you're here as a representative of your union. You and other members have taken action and spoken out. What has compelled you to do so?
Yeah, so a lot of my colleagues and I, we took an oath. We all swear an oath to the Constitution to uphold our laws. Those of us drawn to this work are not your sort of, I would say, our typical civil servants. A lot of folks come to this work with a passion for refugee protection. And so when we saw the travel ban come in, my colleagues and I were distraught. We saw that our entire program, our jobs were being undermined. We saw this historic mission being undermined. And, our union, who represents these folks that do this work, was having a tremendous impact on their work. And so we felt obligated. We were all bearing witness to what is happening, and we felt the need to speak out however we could.
I imagine there's some urgency, some kind of hair on fire in this moment. Is that accurate?
Yes, Lindsay, it really is a hair on fire moment. It really is urgent, I feel like, to get this message out. As you've mentioned, I'm in the unique position to tell this story. As you know, I'm a government employee and I cannot speak in that capacity, but in my union capacity, I can speak on behalf of my colleagues and I, who we represent, who, for the last almost 4 years, it's just been blow after blow to what we do, and it's taken a toll. And so,
and what's at stake, Jason? Just give me a sense. Why should people who are at home feel alarmed in this moment?
So people at home should feel alarmed because we're on the brink of America no longer being in the refugee protection business, essentially. Since 2017, as I mentioned, it started then with the travel ban. It's progressed throughout. A few different policies that I would like to mention that were implemented over the last couple of years have really forced our members to compromise their oaths and put them in a terrible spot where they're basically forced to do interviews that essentially result in people being either deported to Guatemala, where they're extremely vulnerable, or being forced to wait in Mexico, where they've been preyed upon by cartels and gangs. And our members are the ones that have to do these interviews, and a lot of these folks end up in these situations, and people are outraged. And this is all being done on behalf of the American people in their name as part of the U.S. Immigration Service. If these policies continue to go unchecked, we're basically going to see the end of this mission that's been vital and saved millions of lives and has done so much good for the United States and for our standing in the world.
Jason Marks, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you for your insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.